Imagine this. You're a farmer in the U.S., your field stretching as far as the eye can see. You've worked these lands for generations, relying on one thing: China's insatiable appetite for your crops. Then, one day, you wake up to the news that your biggest buyer, responsible for $164 billion of trade, has just walked out the door. No warning, no negotiations, just gone. This isn't just a bad day. It's a disaster of historic proportions. And this wasn't some random fallout. No, this was part of a much bigger plan. A plan that's reshaping global trade, toppling traditional power structures, and forcing everyone to rethink who holds the cards. So why did China do it? Let's start with the why. Because once you understand that, everything else starts to make sense. Let's get started. This story begins in the U.S.-China trade war. If you missed it, this was a tariff battle royale. The U.S. slapped massive tariffs on Chinese goods, thinking it could pressure China into submission. But China didn't just roll over. Nope, they hit back where it hurt most: agriculture.
They're in the process of setting up kind of their own trade network that can support their population and their economy, and do so in a way where they're free of U.S. influence, free of Western influence in general.
Now, why agriculture, you ask? Because it's the backbone of rural America. And here's the genius part. Rural states hold significant sway in U.S. politics. By targeting American farmers, China wasn't just retaliating. They were turning up the heat on Washington. This wasn't just an economic move. It was political chess. Let's talk about soybeans. These little beans are a big deal. Before the trade war, nearly 60% of all U.S. soybean exports went straight to China. That's billions of dollars annually. When China cut off that pipeline, it wasn't just a financial hit. It was like pulling the rug out from under an entire industry. But here's where it gets really interesting. China didn't just walk away and leave a void. No, they used this moment to plan for the future. You see, they realized something critical. Relying on one supplier, especially one as unpredictable as the U.S., was a massive risk. So, they pivoted, they diversified, they started looking elsewhere. And this wasn't just a short-term reaction. It was the beginning of a long-term strategy to make sure China never finds itself in such a vulnerable position again. The question is, if China stopped buying from the U.S., who stepped up to take their place? Before we continue further, tell us, are you enjoying the video? If yes, please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel for more videos about China's development, power, and influence on the world. Let's continue now. Let us introduce you to the new MVPs of global agriculture, Brazil and Argentina. When China turned its back on American farmers, South America saw the opportunity of a lifetime. Brazil didn't just step into China's market, they dominated it. With vast, fertile lands and a growing agricultural industry, Brazil had all the tools to become a major player. But when the trade war hit, they took it to the next level. Here's how they did it. First, they ramped up soybean production like there was no tomorrow. Farmers planted more, harvested more, and exported more. Second, Brazil invested heavily in infrastructure. They built new roads, expanded ports, and streamlined their supply chain, all to make it easier to ship goods to China. By 2023, Brazil wasn't just a competitor. It was the world's largest soybean exporter, smashing records and cementing its place in China's market. Now, let's not forget Argentina. While smaller than Brazil, Argentina still played a significant role. They focused on corn, wheat, and other grains, becoming a reliable backup for China's growing demands. Together, these two nations filled the gap left by the U.S., and then some. But here's what makes this even more fascinating. China wasn't just buying crops from South America, they were investing in it. Beijing poured money into Brazilian infrastructure, helped fund agricultural projects, and even negotiated long-term trade deals that sidelined the U.S. entirely. Think about that for a second. China didn't just find new suppliers, they built relationships, forged partnerships, and secured their future. And this wasn't just about food, it was about creating a safety net. So, what's China's real game here? Is it just about saving money, or is there a bigger strategy at play? Let's get one thing straight. China isn't just playing the long game, they're rewriting the rules. This isn't just about retaliating against tariffs or saving a few bucks on soybeans. No, this is about survival. Feeding 1.4 billion people isn't a logistical challenge, it's a national security priority. And China knows it can't afford to put all its eggs in one basket. So, they diversified. Brazil and Argentina were just the start. China is now buying from Eastern Europe, Africa, and even Southeast Asia. By spreading its food supply across multiple regions, China ensures that no single country can hold it hostage. But wait, there's more. China isn't just looking outward, they're innovating at home. From vertical farms in urban centers to AI-driven irrigation systems, China is revolutionizing agriculture. They're investing in climate-resistant crops, robotic harvesting, and even gene-editing technology. In other words, they're building the farms of the future while everyone else is stuck in the past. And then there's the Belt and Road Initiative. Most people think of it as a massive infrastructure project, and it is. But it's also about agriculture. China is helping countries like Ethiopia and Zambia modernize their farming practices in exchange for export deals. It's a win-win situation. China gets more food, and these nations get the resources they need to grow. But this isn't just about food, it's about power. A nation that controls its food supply controls its destiny. And by building this global network, China is making sure it's in control, no matter what happens on the geopolitical stage. Meanwhile, what's happening in the US? Well, let's just say things are not looking good. Now here's where things get grim. What does it look like when an entire industry loses its biggest customer? Spoiler alert, it's not pretty.
New information on one of America's economic backbones, farming. Countries like Brazil and even Russia now outperform the U.S. farmers in exporting both wheat and soybeans. A recent Wall Street Journal article lays out how this is affecting farmer incomes, reading, quote, America's agricultural dominance has eroded. Other countries' rising share of global trade and their bin-busting harvests have helped fuel a multi-year downturn in crop prices that is pushing some U.S. farmers out of business.
Let us paint you a picture. Fields of soybeans rotting in silos because there's no one to buy them. Tractors sitting idle because planting isn't worth the cost. Small towns turning into ghost towns as farmers go bankrupt one after another. This isn't just theoretical, it's reality. Over 2,000 family farms filed for bankruptcy in the first year after China cut ties. Entire communities, built around agriculture, started to crumble. Schools shut down. Businesses closed their doors. Families packed up and left, searching for opportunities elsewhere. And it's not just about money. There's a deep emotional toll here. Farming isn't just a job, it's a way of life. Losing that isn't just losing an income, it's losing a piece of your identity. The rise in farmer suicides is a heartbreaking reminder of just how devastating this crisis has been. Even for farmers trying to adapt, the road ahead is rough. Sure, some are exploring new markets in Europe or Asia, but rebuilding those relationships takes time they don't have. And with Brazil and Argentina now firmly entrenched in China's market, the competition is fiercer than ever. The question is, can U.S. agriculture bounce back? Or is this the beginning of the end for America's farming dominance? Here's the truth. Recovery is possible, but it's going to take a monumental effort. First, farmers need to diversify. The days of relying on one major buyer, whether it's China or anyone else, are over. They need to explore new markets, build new relationships, and expand their reach. Second, they need to innovate. Precision farming, climate-resistant crops, and sustainable practices aren't just buzzwords, they're necessities. The U.S. has the resources and the technology. It's time to use them. Third, government support will be crucial. But this isn't just about subsidies. Farmers need policies that encourage growth, like investments in infrastructure and incentives for exporting to new markets. But let's not sugarcoat it. This won't be easy. While the U.S. scrambles to recover, China, Brazil, and Argentina are already miles ahead. So the real question isn't just whether American farmers can recover. It's whether they can stay relevant in a world that's moving on without them. China's decision to cut off U.S. agriculture wasn't just a trade war tactic. It was a power move. It exposed America's vulnerabilities, boosted South America's rise, and solidified China's position as a global leader. This isn't just a story about soybeans or trade deals. It's about power, survival, and the shifting balance of global influence. China is playing the long game, and they're playing it well. The US, well, let's just say it has some catching up to do. We would like to take a moment here and appreciate you all for commenting and sharing your opinions. Your insights always impress us. So, can America adapt, or will it get left behind as history marches forward?